So we're going to look at the end of the parsha, where the Torah tells us that firstly, a very strange thing happens, right? And that is that Abraham gets remarried. Right? It says, "Vayosef Avraham vayikach isha shema Keturah," and he takes this woman, and her name is Keturah. And Rashi explains why the reason why she's Keturah. It's actually Hagar, and she's called Keturah because her deeds were as beautiful as Ketoret, which is an interesting description. Why would you describe deeds as being beautiful as incense? So I saw from one of the commentaries explained that in the same way as incense doesn't just impact on the place that you light it, but it has a longer lasting impact. So too did her deeds. The question is exactly what were these deeds that she did that were so wonderful, that were like a Torah? Not clear, and it's not 100% clear. But either way, Avram takes her. He knows her. He knows who she is. He knows where she's at, and he takes her to be his new wife. Well, he takes her as a woman. It's not clear again what she is. Is she his wife? Is she his concubine? Rashi elsewhere tells us that a wife is taken with the ketubah, which means that there are obligations on the husband, whereas a concubine, there are no obligations on the husband. And then the Torah starts telling us that she vateled lo at Zimran with Yokshan with Medan with Midyan with Shishbak with Shuach, and she bore him these 6 children. You'll see it's interesting to note that one of them is Midyan. Midyan is one of the people that seem to be one of the tribes that seem to be a bit of a nemesis of Bnei Israel through history, and that perhaps one could say that we can find the source of the reason for that animosity in what we're about to see. And then it just says about that Yokshan had certain people, and the children of Midian were Ephah and Aphir. And then it says, having established the fact that Keturah had descendants, which seemingly were the children of Avram Avinu, it then says, Vayitein Avraham et kol asher lo leYitzchak. Avram gained everything that he had. Et kol asher lo leYitzchak. V'livnei apilakshim asher Avraham, and to the sons of the Pilakshim that were to Avraham. And from there, some of the Mepharshim explain that these children were not Abraham's children. These children, now it's very different from Rashi, because Rashi is clear that they're their children. But some of the other commentaries, the Sforno and others, explain that they weren't his children, but rather that she brought them with when she married Abraham, and he brought them up as his children. So he imparted into them the values that he purported, everything like that. But only Yitzchak gets everything that Avram has. He gave them gifts. And he sent them off. From away from his son Yitzchak, while he was still alive, to the east. So now it's interesting. Now, where is that east? Because Abraham is really sending them back to the place where he comes from Ur Kasdim, which is the east from Eretz Yisrael. Some people say that this is where the knowledge of these dark arts comes from. That Avram, when he gave them gifts, what were the gifts? Rashi says that he quotes from the Midrash that Amar Rab Nechemia bracha de Ataki she'amala Kodesh Baruch Avram yebracha. So when it comes to Yitzchak, he said he gave him the bracha. He gave Yitzchak the bracha that to be mavarech other people. He gave the bracha to bless other people, and to the Pilakshim he gave them the matanot. What are the matanot? Chazal say shem tuma masalayim. He gave them the shem tuma. This, like, I don't know, the understanding of the dark arts, of the understanding of this negative spiritual forces, and at the end of the day, that is not really what they wanted. Also, the other, the Rashi says, Davar acher, everything that he received on that whole story with Sara, when she goes to Avimelech and she goes to Paro, all of that wealth that he got from them, he gave to to these other sons, sent them east with that. Why? He didn't want any of that. And it's clear that therefore he's really giving them second best. He's giving them like the chaff of what the real ikar is, what he gives to Yitzchak. And one could say perhaps that creates an enormous amount of animosity between Yitzchak and the rest of them. But we don't hear much about them except with Midian. Okay. And then it says, Avraham Asher Chai. These are the years of Avraham Asher Chai that he lived. Ma'at Shana, V'shivim Shana, V'chamesh Shanim, 175 years. And the Rashi points out, similar like he does with Sara, where it says that she lived 127 years. He says the same thing here. Ben kuf ke ben ayin ke ben hay below chet. The difference, Avraham, from the age of 5, lived without chet. He lived without sin. Even when he was 70 years old, 70 was like 100. All these years he lived without any avera. But that's why Rashi understands it. But others explain that what does it mean that these are the years of Avraham Asher Chai, the years that he lived. And the Netziv and others explain that what it means is that these are the years that he was productive. He didn't just live, he didn't just survive, but rather he lived his life being productive every single day. And because he was productive every single day counted, and every year counted. I saw a beautiful thing from somebody who said, they said, be productive and then consume. And that's Avraham Avinu. Avraham is a net producer rather than a net consumer, and that's really what this pasuk teaches us, is what to do with our lives. Avraham breathes his last breath. He's old. He's a ripe old age, as we call it. And he's gathered to his people. Gathered unto his people. Whatever that means, that's very difficult to understand, because he's got who are his people? Who is he being gathered to? And I haven't got a great answer for that, but that's just the point. Right? And then what happens? Avraham dies. Now, when Avraham dies, he's now got, we know, he's got these 6 children from the Pilagshim, from Keturah, and he's got Yishmael, and he's got Yitzchak. But the only one that's with him is Yitzchak, because everybody else has been sent away. But the Torah tells us, Vayikberu oto Yitzchak v'Yishmael banav. Yitzchak and Yishmael, his 2 sons, bury him. And it is on this point that the Chizkuni points out that it's clear that those other children were not really his children. He also quotes from Divrei HaYamim, which also seems to imply that he only really had 2 children. But it's these 2 children, and Yishmael comes after Yitzchak. Why does Yishmael come after Yitzchak? As Rashi tells us, Yishmael the tshuva. He put Yitzchak in front of him. And that's what it means when Avram died, that he died with a certain contentment, was the fact that Yishmael had come back to regain his place as the progeny of Avram Avinu, not only as on a physical level, but also on a spiritual level. He done tshuva. And where do they take him? They take him El Meirat HaMachpelah. They take him to the Meirat HaMachpelah, El Sadeh Ephron, Ben Sochar, Hachiti, Asher Al Pnei Mamre, and they take the Torah describes everything about the Meirat HaMachpelah, which we learned about right at the beginning of the parsha. Hasadeh Asher Kana Avram Eit Bnei Chet, Shama Kubar Avram v'Sara Ishto. It just describes that the fact that Avram Avinu bought it, etc., that field that where Avram was buried and so is Sarah buried. And the question that perhaps we might want to ask ourselves is, why is it so important that the Torah once again repeats the fact that this place that Avram is being buried is a place that he purchased. It's a place that is his. It's a place that is legally entitled, and he carries he's taken legal transfer of that. And perhaps one can say that the reason is because once a person passes on, all that was with him passes with him, except whatever his legacy is. And the legacy of Avraham Avinu is not just a spiritual legacy of us as his children, but the legacy of Avraham Avinu is also the physical legacy that he was able to create, especially or specifically with the Meirat HaMachpelah and the acquisition of this place in Hebron, the place in which we learned before. Hebron is a place that's mechubar, it brings things together, and so therefore it's important that even in his death, that physical legacy is continued. It's very nice that Yishmael did tshuva and came back and started behaving in the appropriate way, and it's wonderful that Yitzchak is going to carry on, but that physical legacy also needs to be part of that. And then it says, "Vayi acharei mot Avraham," and after the death of Avraham, "Vayevarech Elohim et Yitzchak beno." Hashem blesses Yitzchak. Vayeshev Yitzchak in Be'er Lachai Ro'i, and Yitzchak stays in Be'er Lachai Ro'i. And Rashi points out, what does it mean? Vayihi acharei mot Avraham. What does it mean after? Why does it have to tell us that? Vayivarech Elohim et Yitzchak, after the death of Avraham. So Rashi comes and says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichamon tanchumei avedim. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and he vayivarech et Yitzchak beno. He gave him a bracha. What's the bracha? The bracha is the bracha of nichum avedim. We often think that in our engagement with avedim, we're just there to comfort them. We're not. We're there to give them a blessing. Hamakam Yanachem Eschem is not just a statement. When we say Hashem should comfort you, it's a bracha. It's a bracha of nechama, but it's a bracha as well. That's what we learn from this parsha. And the other thing, Rashi says, Davar acher, afal pi shemasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu zabrachot l'Avraham. Even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the ability to bless to Avraham Avinu, which means he's the one who should have blessed Yitzchak. It says that Avraham gave everything to Yitzchak, but he didn't say he blessed Yitzchak. So why is it that Hashem is blessing Yitzchak? So look at the Rashi says, Nisyarei levarech es Yitzchak. Avraham was terrified. He was terrified to bless Yitzchak. Why? Because he saw with his nevuah, with his prophecy, that Esau was going to come out of Yitzchak. And he said, Yavo habala brachot v'yavarech asher yitav beinav v'akadosh baruch hu baruch. And he said, oh wow, let the owner of all the brachos, the one who gave me the bracha to give the bracha, let him come and bless what he feels is right. He didn't want to give the bracha because he knew that the bracha of Avraham Avinu is a powerful bracha that stays. And because it's a bracha of Avraham Avinu, it's not as specific as would be the bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so therefore he says, let HaKadosh Baruch Hu come and give the bracha so that he will give the bracha, which will focus on Yitzchak specifically. The Kli Yakar points out that he could say, "Nochal lamar shebaruch hu sheyeh beno l'chol davar hu levad v'lo b'nei apilakshim." He said it could be that when it says "Vayavarech lem es Yitzchak beno," that he's coming to say that Yitzchak got a specific bracha, that only Yitzchak would be the one who would be able to carry on that legacy of Avraham. Why not the b'nei apilakshim? Ki hem adoimim ki ilo einam banav, because they're as if they're not even his children. Rak Yitzchak levad yikarei beno v'lo mishpat ha-Yerusha. And only Yitzchak was called Beno. Only Yitzchak is called the son of Avraham Avinu all the way through. And so therefore it's only to Yitzchak that the Yerusha is going to flow. Only to Yitzchak who's going to contain that for the rest of his life. And so therefore we see that as the parsha ends and the life of Avraham Avinu ends, the two aspects are passed down. The one is that spiritual legacy of who Avraham Avinu was. Yitzchak takes it in a completely different way. That's a discussion that perhaps we will have next week. But in addition to that, there's also the physical legacy of the Meirat HaMachpelah of Hebron, Ira Avot, as we call it. And please God, we should be able to continue that legacy in the way we behave and the way we understand and contribute to the world in which we live. Have a beautiful day, everybody, and have a beautiful Shabbos.